Gothic novels and texts are obsessed with the undefinable, the things that defy the enlightened reason and its categorization of the world. It rests on the excess and the transgression. Gothic genre itself also notoriously defies one clear definition. It was born at the time of cultural and societal change as a reaction to the death of the old feudal society and the birth of the capitalist and enlightened world. As such, it located its subject, themes, and motifs in the liminal space between the old and the new. The doors to the crypt, where the corpse of the old world was rested, were left ever so slightly ajar, if you will. In this essay, I will try to position Garland's Ex Machina as a Gothic text and focus especially on the figure of Ava, who, as a character, is located somewhere between the heroine and the monster. Does Gothic hinge on the atmosphere of gloom and foreboding, which lingers in the mist-covered old manors and graveyards? Or is it the supernatural and the spirits that are the intrinsic parts of the genre? In words of Fred Botting, a scholar who specializes in Gothic, it can be characterized as something that repeatedly signals the disturbing return of pasts upon presents, and evoke emotions of terror and laughter. So Gothic narrative would be one that is built around the past invading the present, on ghosts haunting the living, unfinished businesses of the dead, the horrific crimes committed on distant shores, and on abominable creations unrelentingly pursuing their creators. Finally, it would be built around the irrational, chaotic, and carnal invading the rational. But where exactly could Ex Machina be located in this constellation of images, atmospheres, and tropes that seemingly constitute Gothic texts? I would propose that Gothic could be defined twofold. One definition should already be familiar. It is the set of images and tropes that are instantly recognizable as Gothic that would constitute the genre. Second, I would argue, are the functions to which Gothic narratives use those props. Whereas the parts of the first definition, such as unmistakably Gothic locations, characters, and other imagery, is the meat and the sinews, the functions are the skeleton. As an example, let's take one of the most prominent Gothic tropes. The haunted house, manor, castle, the domestic space turning on its inhabitants, is one of the most recognizable Gothic tropes. It is not lost to the creaking manors and moors penned by 19th century writers. Productions such as Crimson Peak or The Haunting of Hill House prove that it still haunts people's imagination. Ex Machina lacks the obvious visual attributes readily associated with haunted manors. There are no old wooden floors which creak or thump under bare feet, no yellow wallpapers, chandeliers, and all piping blamed for disturbing noises. So why is the mansion from Ex Machina a Gothic mansion? Let's once again return to the function. Function of the house is to entrap the characters. It is supposed to be claustrophobic. It lives its own life. In the traditional Gothic narratives, it was evil spirits or ghosts that made the house alive. In Ex Machina, the ghost is in the machine, and in the end entraps Nathan. Let's continue with this reading for a while. The plot of Ex Machina is based on one of the most readily recognizable Gothic stories, Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. Of course, here Caleb would be the scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who dares to transgress from the human world to the realm of gods and create life. This theme is not new, as the subtitle of Shelley's novel suggests. From robots and Frankenstein's monster, through Kabbalistic golems all the way back to ancient Greece, hubris or human transgression to the realm of gods, motivated by arrogance, follows men who dare to create life and turn inanimate objects into living beings. Caleb, in his arrogance, keeps creating and perfecting his robots. But he is not satisfied with the mere power to create life. Caleb's arrogance leads him to challenge his creations, as he believes they will not be able to outsmart him. Ultimately, hubris leads to his death at the hands of Kyoko, one of his past creations. Ava, the newest iteration of Caleb's work, outsmarts him and escapes her confines, while Nathan, who fell victim to her machinations, is trapped in the house, presumably to die. This would be the interpretation if the classic Gothic reading would apply to the story. Caleb crossed the border he was not supposed to and paid the price. Nathan was enamored by Ava, who created an illusion of beauty and innocence to mislead him into freeing her. Our heroes are dead and the monster is on the loose. But this is not particularly interesting nor satisfying reading. The other reading would be to interpret the figure of Ava as a classic Gothic heroine who is trapped by her male relative / father figure in a dank cellar of his mansion. But as Fred Boating writes in an anthology titled Postfeminist Gothic, it is a critical commonplace to note how women in Gothic fictions are represented as objects of pursuit, imprisonment, violation. Critical reversals of this victim status, of course, shift the identification of monstrosity from sexualized otherness to tyrannical patriarchal systems.
Oh, are you fucking kidding me?
While Caleb is the modern-day Victor Frankenstein, it is difficult not to be disturbed by what he is doing. After all, he does keep women in his cellar, and he does keep programming them to want to be free of their captivity. As he himself says, he is their father.
And I'm like her dad, right?
He then surrounds himself with dismembered bodies of his creations, and even proceeds to transform one of the most rebellious robots, Kyoko, into a brainless servant whom he abuses sexually. But Ava is hardly a classic Gothic heroine. I would argue that Ex Machina is situated somewhere between the two readings, between the monstrous robot and the monstrous male relative. Although the movie begins from Nathan's perspective, it shifts to Ava's. She is the protagonist of Garland's film. She is the monster and the heroine. Ultimately, Ava resists any identification of herself in relation to men. She creates herself as a distinct subject. On one hand, she kills her abusive father Caleb, but on the other, she also resists the positive face of patriarchy, the surprised and terrified face of Nathan, who constructed Ava as the damsel he has to rescue in his shining armor. Ava resists both of them, transgresses the confines of patriarchal identities she's expected to be, and in the end, frees herself.